Hello everyone. I figured I would go ahead and walk through all 10 philosophy terms for you this week. I don't have a whiteboard right now, so you'll just have to put up with me. But what I want to do is in this Juno pod, you're going to see 10 terms listed out that will actually be on the quiz for tomorrow. It'll be pretty straightforward on the quiz. Don't worry too much about it. I know you only have like one day to study for it, but just so you're familiar with the terms, and then I think it'll be a multiple choice quiz on Jupyter Pod for tomorrow. So to that end, hi by the way, good to see you all. Hope you all are doing just fine. Welcome to my office at home. Absolute altruism, deontological ethics, teleological ethics, divine command theory, ethical hedonism, natural law, norm, moral law, and skepticism. Now, I want to give you an illustration of at least 4 of these terms, maybe even more. Think as if you are in New York City and everything's okay. There's no coronavirus, and you know you're just visiting. You're on Times Square, and you decide to you're looking around, and there just happens to be an old lady on the side of on the sidewalk. Now, this old lady has a bunch of groceries in her hands, and she's wanting to get across the road. More ethics or moral philosophy would approach this situation differently depending on the kind of the ethical school of thought that you ascribe to. Okay, so for example, the question becomes, what is the right or the wrong thing to do in this situation? You are, let's say, a young student. You're a senior at Founders Classical, and you have the ability to help out. Okay, let's just say you have a backpack on, but that's it. You actually have quite a bit of money in your pocket. It's a really nice day out. It's not like it's snowing out or raining out, but this lady, you can tell on first sight that she really has she has a lot of she has some problems, and she looks as if she needs help getting across the street. The street is busy, and her hands are full. She's laden down, if you will, with garbage, not with groceries, not garbage, groceries. So, divine command theory would say that moral principles justifying what's right or wrong in this situation are defined in terms of God's commands, and that moral duties are logically dependent upon God's commands. So this is our first scenario. Why is it right or wrong to help this lady out? The first answer for a divine command theorist is that God said so. God told you to help out, let's just say, orphans and widows, and especially people in need. And this is a situation. So upon first glance at this, you look at it and you say, okay, good. God has told me to do this. Whatever God is, divine command theory doesn't care. It merely is about the question: has God said that this is right or wrong to do? So, divine command theory says you in this situation need to help the old lady across the street. Great. Next situation, let's compare deontological with teleological ethics. Deontological ethics and teleological ethics, you'll see them compared a lot everywhere, really. But for this scenario, deontological ethics argues that the right action is inherent within the situation. There is a duty that younger people help older people across the road. Anywhere, everywhere is kind of like stumbling upon a Good Samaritan situation. The situation in and of itself has duty with it. It doesn't matter outcomes. It doesn't matter what God has said. It is merely a situation where you are required to act because there's a duty or an obligation. Ethical systems that consider certain features in the moral act itself to have intrinsic value. Now, contrast this with teleological ethics. Teleological ethics says that the situation is right or wrong based on some outcome. So, taking the situation, let's say you go ahead and you recognize the situation and you want to help out, but you want to help out because she needs to get across the road and she needs to get across safely, and there will be a good outcome of you having helped her get across the street. So we look at this situation and we see teleologically the outcome is right if and only if the outcome of the situation comes to be true. So, ethical systems holding that the ultimate criterion of morality lies in some non-moral value that results from the action. This contrasts then with deontological ethics. So I'm giving you some of the answers as we go through. Those are the two. So those three scenarios. God said it's right. Why? A, God said it. That's divine command theory. B, there's an intrinsic duty. That's deontological ethics. 3, there's the right outcome. That would be teleological ethics. Notice that there's 3 very different ways of approaching this situation with the old lady crossing the street in the middle of New York in Times Square. New York City in Times Square. Okay? So those are 3 main ones. Now let's look at ethical hedonism. The theory that pleasure is the only intrinsic positive value and that pain or unpleasant consciousness is the only negative intrinsic value. All values derive from these two. Now, I mentioned under teleological ethics that there was an outcome that maybe perhaps you felt or you felt good about yourself, about the outcome of helping her across the street. Well, when you look at ethical hedonism, you might notice that there is some good pleasure from both of you whenever you cross the street. Mind you, there might be some bad pleasure from all the taxi drivers that you made to come to a screeching halt in the middle of Times Square, but there will be 2 good outcomes. 1, the lady will feel really, really good about not having to carry her groceries across the street, and that she hasn't dropped anything, and that her life didn't flash before her eyes because a young, upstanding student from who knows where, from Texas, helped her across the street. And you walked away from that feeling better about yourself because you actually helped a local out in New York City, especially an old lady, get on her way. So there's 2 positive outcomes, and this is what ethical hedonism would look more at. Now, we will see more of this in John Stuart Mill as we read him, I believe, not next week, but the following week. But for ethical hedonism, there are outcomes of pleasure or pain that define the morality of the action. So there's 4 primary ways of thinking about the action of helping an old lady across the street. Now, in that, you might notice that there might be some natural law going through there. Perhaps there is an eternal absolute moral law that can be discovered by reason. What that would be, I'll leave that up to you to kind of think through and say, okay, well, perhaps the natural law there would be, once again, kind of like we notice under divine command theory, perhaps helping people in need. That you must help people in need. So that might be something, but I'm not going to officially say that, just helping to further explain what's meant perhaps by natural law. And then let me hit absolute, a principle that is universally binding and can never be overridden by another principle. And then norm, a rule or authoritative standard. So perhaps in New York City, there actually is a norm where it's not like you'll get fined, but you're expected to help an old lady across the street. Moral law is a universal principle for which all rational beings are responsible for not violating. And skepticism is really a view that we can have no knowledge at all. So looking at this situation, a skeptic would say, well, no, we have zero moral knowledge about this situation. We don't know what's right or wrong about it. All right? And so we cannot have any sort of moral determinations from this. Anyhow, all that to say, those are the 10 terms that you need to be familiar with, and that will be on the quiz for tomorrow. We'll see you in another video.